What does it take for a comedian to hide their true self? For some of the funniest people on earth, it meant living a double life. They made us laugh on stage. But behind the curtain, they were hiding a huge secret about who they loved. We're about to uncover the hidden lives of 19 comedy legends, including one star who built his entire career on a flamboyant character while never speaking the truth. 1. Paul Lynde. Anyone who watched 60s and 70s TV knows the name Paul Lynde. He was the undisputed king of the game show Hollywood Squares, holding court in the famous Center Square. He was known for his snarky, high-pitched jokes and his super flamboyant style. You see, he was also a regular on Bewitched as the hilarious Uncle Arthur. To put it mildly, his entire public persona was campy and over the top, and audiences ate it up. He was one of the most recognizable and beloved TV stars of his generation. But here's the thing nobody tells you. While everyone thought they knew, Paul Lynde never ever confirmed he was gay in public. It was Hollywood's biggest open secret. He was terrified that if he actually said the words, his career would be over. The public loved his character, but the man himself lived in fear. He had a well-known history of run-ins with the law and personal struggles, often linked to his frustration with having to hide. It wasn't until after he passed away in 1982 that biographies finally confirmed the details of his private life, a life he could never share. Lynde may have used his persona as a shield, but our next comedian was just as flamboyant, and his journey to being open was just as complicated. 2. Charles Nelson Reilly. If Paul Lynde was the king of the Center Square, Charles Nelson Reilly was the king of the match game. He was famous for his pipe, his scarves, his oversized glasses, and his crazy, over-the-top answers that rarely matched the contestants. He was a huge Broadway star, even winning a Tony Award in 1962. But for most of America, he was the hilarious guy on TV game shows in the 70s and 80s, sitting right next to his good friend, Brett Somers. You see, what many overlooked was that this was a character. Like Lynde, his entire act was built on being flamboyant and a little bit nuts. But the man behind the persona was a serious theater director and a respected teacher. He was also a gay man who lived his life privately. He was with his partner, Patrick Hughes, for over 25 years. But it was all kept very quiet. He never felt the need to make a big public statement. Only late in his life, in a one-man show called Save It for the Stage, did he finally talk about his upbringing and his life as a gay man. Reilly kept his private life quiet for decades. But our next star was so loud and wild, you would have thought he'd share everything. The truth, however, was much different. 3. Rip Taylor. Get ready for the confetti. If you ever saw a man on TV throwing glitter and paper all over a stage, it was almost certainly Rip Taylor. He was called the King of Kitsch and the Crying Comedian. He was a staple on The Gong Show, Hollywood Squares, and was even in movies like Wayne's World. His whole brand was pure, joyful chaos. He wore wild tuxedos, a very obvious wig, and screamed his jokes. He was a force of nature, but for all that loudness, Rip Taylor was incredibly quiet about one thing: his personal life. He built this huge, flamboyant character, but the man behind the confetti was a mystery. Believe it or not, he was briefly married to a woman, a Vegas showgirl, back in the 1960s. But that was short-lived. For decades, his true self was kept under wraps. It wasn't until very late in his career that he even hinted at it. After he passed away in 2019, it was confirmed by his publicist that he had been in a long-term relationship with a man, something he never felt comfortable sharing with his audience. Taylor used a wild persona to cover his truth, but what if you were part of a group that was already famous for being totally bizarre? Our next comedian was a member of one of the most famous comedy troupes ever, and his secret was kept for decades. 4. Graham Chapman. Everyone knows the comedy group Monty Python. They changed comedy forever with Monty Python's Flying Circus, Silly Walks, and a quest for a holy grail. The lead member of that group, the man who played King Arthur and Brian in their movies, was Graham Chapman. He was actually a medical doctor who gave it all up for comedy. He was known for playing the strong, stable, but slightly silly characters at the center of the madness. But here's the kicker. Behind the scenes, Graham was living a life that was very different from his on-screen persona. He was openly gay in his private life, but the public had no idea. What many overlooked is that he and his partner, David Sherlock, were together for over 20 years, from 1966 until Graham's passing. They even adopted a 14-year-old boy, John Tomaksek, together in 1971. That's a huge deal for that time. The secret was so well kept that it wasn't widely known until a 1998 biography after he had passed away. His Python partners knew, but to the world, he was just one of the zany British comics. Chapman's secret was kept by his whole group. But what about a modern comedian who had to face the same fears in the 21st century? The next story is, to put it mildly, shocking. 5. Jared Carmichael. Jumping to the modern day, let's talk about Jared Carmichael. He's a smart, quiet comedian known for his thoughtful and sometimes uncomfortable comedy specials. He had his own sitcom, The Carmichael Show, which was a big hit. He was seen as one of the most honest and brave voices in comedy, talking about all kinds of tough subjects. But as it turns out, he was holding back his biggest truth. For years, fans and critics noticed he would tell jokes about being gay or about the topic, but he never said it was him. He would dance around the subject. The thing nobody tells you is that he was terrified. He was raised in a very traditional, low-income neighborhood, and he thought telling his truth would mean losing his family and his connection to his community. Finally, in 2022, he released a special called Rothaniel. In it, he just said it. He told the audience he was gay. It was a huge, powerful moment, and he said he felt like he was finally free. Jared used his art to finally tell his truth. Our next comedian also used his stage act to work through his own terror about his identity. 6. Simon Amstel. Over in the UK, Simon Amstel is a huge name. He's an incredibly awkward, sharp, and very funny comedian. He got his start as a TV host, most famously on the music quiz show Never Mind the Buzzcocks, where he was known for being brutally funny with his celebrity guests. His stand-up is deeply personal, often about his own anxieties and failings. But for years, the biggest source of his anxiety was a secret he was keeping. Simon was, in his own words, terrified of being gay. He grew up feeling like it was the worst possible thing he could be. He tried to date women, he tried to ignore it, but it just made him miserable. His comedy became his therapy. He started to make jokes about his confusion, his discomfort, and his private life. Finally, in his 2019 Netflix special Set Free, he laid it all out. He talked about his journey, his fears, and his acceptance of himself. It was a secret he hid for years, not from fear of his career, but from his own deep-seated terror. Simon's journey was a personal one. Our next comedian's story is all about how his identity is tied directly to his most famous work. 7. Joel Kim Booster. If you've seen the movie Fire Island, you know Joel Kim Booster. He wrote and starred in the 2022 movie, which was a huge critical success. He's now one of the most famous openly gay comedians and writers in Hollywood. His stand-up is fast, smart, and talks a lot about the gay community. But here's the kicker. It wasn't always this way. Joel was adopted from South Korea and raised in a very conservative, religious family in the American Midwest. To put it mildly, his upbringing did not make it easy to accept himself. When he first started doing stand-up comedy in Chicago and New York, he was not out. He was just a comedian. He was hiding that part of himself, worried about how it would be received and how it would fit with his family back home. He slowly started to bring his real life into his act, and as he did, his comedy got sharper and more popular. Fire Island was the big moment, a movie that was all about his life as a gay man. Joel's story became his biggest hit. Our next comedian also used his creative talents to tell his story, but in a very different way. 8. Mawaan Rizwan. Mawaan Rizwan is a British-Pakistani comedian, writer, and actor who is, to put it mildly, a burst of energy. He's known for his colorful, joyful, and slightly chaotic comedy. He's been in major shows like the Zombie series Generation Z and the sci-fi show Doctor Who. But his journey to being open was a unique one. He grew up in a traditional Muslim family, and he knew from a young age that he was gay. He just didn't know how to tell them. He kept his personal life a secret for years, living a kind of double life. The thing nobody tells you is how he finally came out to his family. He did it through his art. He created a viral music video called Mango, where he sings about his preference. And then he made a 2020 documentary for the BBC called How to Frighten a Mullah, where he filmed himself trying to tell his mom. It was a brave, funny, and touching way to finally share a secret he'd held for his whole life. Mawaan used his art to come out to his family. Our next comedian, however, had his secret kept until the very end, and it was only revealed after he was gone. 9. John Sessions. John Sessions was a British comedy legend. If you watched UK TV in the 80s and 90s, he was everywhere. He was one of the original stars of the improv show Whose Line Is It Anyway? He was a master impressionist, able to become anyone from a politician to a famous actor in the blink of an eye. He was a regular on comedy panel shows and a respected actor. But what many overlooked was his private life. He was intensely private. He never married, and he never spoke about his romantic life. He was just John Sessions, the funny guy who could do all the voices. He gave an interview in the 90s where he said he was celibate, or not romantically active, and that was all anyone really knew. It wasn't until after he sadly passed away in 2020 that his friends and colleagues began to talk. It was revealed that he was gay, but that he had chosen to keep it a secret his entire life. He was from an older generation that believed you just didn't talk about those things. Sessions kept his secret his entire life. Our next comedian has a similarly flamboyant persona, but his journey to being open was tied to his television fame. 10. Bruno Tonioli. Americans might know him as a judge on Dancing with the Stars, the wild Italian guy who jumps out of his chair and yells, "Say ven." But Bruno Tonioli has been a huge star in the UK for much longer, as a judge on their version of the show, Strictly Come Dancing. He's a professional choreographer and dancer. His comedy comes from his huge, over-the-top personality. For years, Bruno was just that, the flamboyant, funny judge. His personal life was a total mystery. He was surrounded by rumors, but he never talked about it. He was from a small town in Italy, and he said he grew up feeling like an outsider. When he moved to London, he found freedom in the dance world, but as he became a mainstream TV star, he kept that part of himself private. It wasn't until he was already a massive, worldwide star that he began to speak openly about being a gay man, long after the public had already formed their opinions based on his TV character. Bruno's fame made his secret an open one. Our next comedian, however, was a woman on a 60s TV show whose secret life was, to put it mildly, shocking for its time. 11. Judy Carne. Sock It To Me. If you remember that phrase, you remember Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. It was the biggest, craziest, and most popular comedy show of the late 1960s, and the sock it to me girl was Judy Carne. She was a cute, bubbly British comedian and actress who would get drenched with water or fall through a trapdoor every time she said her famous line. On screen, she was the adorable, innocent it girl. But here's the kicker. Her real life was anything but innocent. She was briefly married to movie star Burt Reynolds. But after her fame from Laugh-In faded, she wrote a tell-all book. In her memoir, she revealed a secret life that shocked everyone. She admitted to having numerous affairs and relationships with women. She talked about her personal life in great detail. For the fans who only knew her as the cute girl getting splashed, it was a stunning revelation. Judy's secret life was wild. Our next comedian was also a beloved TV star in the UK, but his secret was forced out in a way that was, well, less than ideal. 12. Gordon Kaye. In Britain, the sitcom Allo Allo is a true classic. It ran for 10 years from 1982 to 1992. The show was a comedy about the French resistance during World War II. The star of the show was Gordon Kaye, who played the flustered cafe owner, René. René was always trying to hide two British airmen from the Germans, while also hiding his affairs with his waitresses from his wife. He was a huge TV star. Gordon Kaye himself was a very private man. He was not at all like his character. He was quiet and shy. He was also gay, a secret he kept from the public. But he didn't get to choose when to come out. In 1990, a British tabloid newspaper got hold of his personal diaries and planned to publish a story exposing his private life. To get ahead of them, Gordon had to go public with his story. He was basically forced out of the closet by the press, a terrible way to have to share his truth. Gordon's secret was used against him. Our next comedian was also from the UK, but she chose to move to a whole new country to be able to live her truth. 13. Gina Yashir. Gina Yashir is a powerhouse British comedian. She's loud, she's smart, and she has a hilarious take on her Nigerian-British upbringing. She was a huge star in the UK, appearing on all the big comedy shows. She even hosted the Mobo Awards, a major music awards show. She was one of the most successful black female comedians in the country. But she was hiding a big part of herself. In the UK comedy scene at the time, she felt she couldn't be open about being a lesbian. She was worried it would hurt her career, that she would be put in a box. The thing nobody tells you is that this is one of the main reasons she moved to America. She felt that in the US, she could be more open and be judged on her comedy, not her personal life. She moved to Los Angeles, started doing specials in the US, and was able to be open and proud of who she was, something she never felt comfortable doing back home. Gina had to cross an ocean to be herself. Our next comedian was also a massive star in the UK, but his secret life was exposed in a much more tragic and public way. 14. Michael Barrymore. In the 1980s and 90s, Michael Barrymore was arguably the biggest star on British television. He was the king of Saturday night. His game shows, like Strike It Lucky, got massive ratings, with over 15 million people tuning in. He was a brilliant entertainer, a master of physical comedy and connecting with the audience. He was married to his manager, a woman named Cheryl, and they were seen as a showbiz power couple. But the whole time, he was hiding a huge secret. He was gay. He was struggling with his identity, and, as he later admitted, with personal demons and harmful substances. His secret was forced into the open in 1995 when he was seen with a man at a club, leading to a huge scandal. He and his wife split. He tried to rebuild his career as an openly gay man, but then a much darker event happened. In 2001, a man was found unresponsive in the swimming pool at his home during a party. The man later passed away. The media frenzy was unbelievable. His career was completely destroyed by the scandal. His secret life, once hidden, was now the source of his total downfall. Michael's story is a tragic one. Our next comedian, however, was a pioneer who used her secret as a political statement. 15. Robin Tyler. Robin Tyler is a true trailblazer. She is a legend in the worlds of comedy and activism. Starting in the 1970s, she carved out a space that simply did not exist. She was one of the very first comedians in America to be open, loud, and proud about her orientation, right on stage. This was not a side note to her act. It was her act. She formed a celebrated comedy duo called Harrison and Tyler. They were not telling knock-knock jokes. They were known for their biting, radical, feminist, and pro-gay rights comedy. They were performing in clubs and at rallies using laughter as a form of protest. But here's the kicker. Before she was a trailblazer, she was in the closet. Deep in the closet. When she first started trying to make it in comedy in the 1960s, she was hiding who she was. The world was not just an unfriendly place, it was a dangerous one. Being openly gay was illegal in most of the country. It could get you arrested, fired from any job, and disowned by your family. For a performer, it was considered absolute career game over. So she hid. She played the game. Then everything changed. The world started to crack open. The rise of the feminist movement and the explosive Stonewall Uprising in 1969 lit a fire. For Robin, these events weren't just news stories. They were a call to action. They gave her the courage to stop hiding and start fighting. And she didn't just fight. She led. In 1978, she was a main organizer for the first ever National March on Washington for lesbian and gay rights. This wasn't a small gathering. This was a massive, historic event that brought over 100,000 people to the nation's capital, demanding basic human rights. She wasn't just secretly gay anymore. She had become one of the loudest, proudest, and most powerful voices for the entire community, using her sharp wit and her comedy as her greatest tools for change. Robin became a voice for a movement. Our next comedian was also a first, but his journey to being open was a long and quiet one. 16. Bob Smith. Bob Smith made history. In 1994, he did something that had never been done before. He became the first openly gay comedian to have his own half-hour special on HBO. This was a massive, massive deal. An HBO special was, and still is, a pinnacle of success for a comedian. It meant you had truly made it. He was also the first to appear on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno as an openly gay comic. And his comedy was revolutionary because it wasn't revolutionary. He was smart, he was clean-cut, and his material was about his life. He talked about his partner, he talked about his family, he talked about everyday situations. His comedy wasn't designed to shock. It was designed to be relatable. He was presenting his life, which happened to be a gay life, as something normal. And in 1994, that was the most radical thing he could do. But before he made history, he was just another comedian hiding a secret. He started his career back in the 1980s. This was long before it was considered safe or acceptable to be out. This was the height of the AIDS epidemic. Fear, misinformation, and bigotry were rampant. Being out in show business was almost unheard of. It was a guaranteed way to be blacklisted. He was, like many others, terrified of what it would do to his career. He saw what happened to other performers who were even rumored to be gay. He was scared. It took him years to find the courage. He spent a decade on the road, performing in clubs, telling jokes, but always editing himself. He was living a double life, hiding a core part of who he was from his audience. He slowly started to test the waters. A small joke here, a minor reference there, and the audiences, they kept laughing. When he finally got the opportunity for that HBO special, he made a choice. He decided to just tell the truth. He talked about his life honestly. And it worked. He received critical acclaim. He didn't just get a TV show, he opened the door for a whole new generation of comedians who could finally be themselves on stage. Bob Smith opened a door. Our next comedian, however, was already one of the most famous women in the world when she finally decided to share her truth. 17. Rosie O'Donnell. Everyone knows Rosie O'Donnell. In the 1990s, she was more than a celebrity. She was an institution. She was the Queen of Nice. Her daytime talk show, The Rosie O'Donnell Show, was a massive, massive hit. It was an unstoppable force. She was America's best friend. She was funny, she was kind to her guests, she famously gushed about Tom Cruise, and she threw koosh balls into the audience. She gave away Kmart gift cards. Her entire brand was built on being a relatable, funny, and most of all, wholesome mom. She was known for being a proud mother, and she talked about her kids all the time. But the whole time, for that entire run, she was keeping a huge secret from her millions of viewers. She was a lesbian. In the world of 90s daytime TV, this was considered a huge risk. This was the bread and butter of Heartland America. Her audience was made up of stay-at-home moms. The fear, from a network perspective, was that if America's Sweetheart came out, her fans would turn on her. They would feel lied to. Advertisers would pull their money. The entire empire she had built could come crashing down. So she stayed in the closet. For her entire, wildly successful 6-year run on the show. It wasn't until 2002, just as her show was coming to an end, that she finally came out. She didn't do it with a big special on her show. She did it in a magazine article and at a charity event. And she did it for a specific, powerful reason: to bring attention to adoption issues for gay parents. She was a foster parent herself and was furious that in places like Florida, gay couples were banned from adopting. She used her massive platform at the very moment she was stepping away from it to make a political stand. It was a huge moment that changed daytime TV forever. Rosie's secret was a huge public revelation. Our next comedian's identity is a core part of her act, but it was a long and difficult journey to get there. 18. Margaret Cho. Margaret Cho is a legend. There is no other word for her. She's a comedian, an actress, and a fierce activist. Her comedy is known for being loud, proud, and, to put it mildly, very bold. She talks about everything. Nothing is off limits. She was a true pioneer for Asian Americans in comedy, and in 1994, she did the impossible. She got her own network sitcom called All American Girl. This was the first show in American history to focus on an Asian American family. The pressure was enormous, but that show was a complete nightmare for her. The producers were relentless. They told her she was too fat for television. They made her crash diet, and she lost so much weight so quickly that she suffered kidney failure. Then they hired a consultant to teach her how to be more Asian. But when she acted more Asian, the producers told her she was not Asian enough. She was trapped in an impossible situation. The pressure was immense, and it sent her into a dark spiral. She fell into addiction, personal demons, and serious health struggles. And underneath all of that, she was struggling with her identity. She knew she was not straight. She was bisexual, but she was hiding it from the public, from her family, and in many ways, even from herself. After her show was mercilessly canceled, she disappeared for a while. She hit rock bottom. But then she came back. She didn't come back to network TV. She came back to the stand-up stage. And she was a whole new comedian. She was angry. She was honest. And she was open. She took all the pain from that show, all her struggles with her health, all her anger at the industry, and her identity as a bisexual woman, and she put all of it into her new act. She turned her secret pain into her greatest comedic weapon. Margaret turned her pain into power. Our next comedian also uses his identity, but his style is, shall we say, a bit more edgy. 19. Scott Capurro. Scott Capurro is a comedian who is not for the faint of heart. At all. His comedy is designed to shock. It is his entire goal. He's an American comedian who became very popular in the UK, where audiences often have a higher tolerance for dark and challenging humor. He goes on stage and says the most outrageous, taboo, and unspeakable things he can possibly think of. His act is relentlessly, graphically, and shockingly about his life as a gay man. He uses his identity as a precision weapon to find an audience's boundaries, and then he destroys them. But it wasn't always his main topic, not by a long shot. When he started out in comedy in San Francisco, he was in the closet. He was just trying to be a comedian, just trying to get stage time and make people laugh. But this was the 1980s, and he was in San Francisco, the epicenter of the AIDS crisis. It was a terrifying time for the gay community. It was a time of intense fear, political hatred, and profound loss. He was watching his friends and community members get sick. He was watching them die. He kept his own life a total secret. He was afraid. It wasn't until the 1990s that he found his true voice. He made a conscious decision. He decided that instead of hiding, he would do the exact opposite. He would be as loud, as open, and as shocking as possible. He would take the very thing that society was telling him to be ashamed of, the secret he was so afraid to reveal, and he would make it the entire point of his act. He would throw it in the audience's face. He made his secret the center of his comedy, using it to challenge audiences and dare them to be offended. Scott made his secret his weapon.